Hey guys, it's Mr. Akins. Thank you for joining me again with our lesson on adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. Our last lesson, we were focusing on using counters to add and subtract these positive and negative numbers. And today we're going to be focusing on the rules. So for the first section here, just like last time, these four problems I'm going to be doing as an example. I'd like you to watch, to pay attention to see how we use these rules and how we can use these slides to help us. And then you're going to be asked to do some examples on your own. So there's nothing for you to write down right now. I just want you to pay attention to what we're doing. So as we look at our first example, the first thing we need to do when we're adding and subtracting our positive and negative numbers is to decide, do we need to rewrite this expression? And so as we look at this, our problem is -6 minus a -12. Well, we learned that we always rewrite our subtraction problems. We rewrite the subtraction as an addition problem. So since this is a subtraction problem, we do need to rewrite it as an addition problem. So we're going to rewrite it as -6 and change that subtraction to an addition. But whenever we change our subtraction to addition, we have to change the sign of the second number. So this is going to become a -6 plus a +12. And remember, if it's positive, we don't have to include a positive sign in front of it. That's just an understood positive number. So now that we've rewritten our expression as -6 plus 12, now we need to look at our next steps. We look at these signs, and the first one is a -6. The second one is a +12. So that means these signs are different. One's negative and one's positive. So we're going to drag this over to show us that those signs are different. So now, based on those signs being the same or whether those signs being different, that's going to tell us whether or not to solve this, we need to add or we need to subtract. So if we remember back to our rules for working with positive and negative numbers, if the signs are different, that tells us we subtract. If the signs are the same, that tells us that we're going to add them. So since they're different, we're going to move this over to tell us that I need to subtract. And then finally, it asks us to circle the sign of the larger absolute value. So as we look at these two numbers, I have a -6 and I have a 12. The -6, the absolute value of -6 is 6. The absolute value of 12 is 12. So that means 12 is our larger absolute value. 12 is a positive number. So then our larger absolute value is going to be positive. So those are the three things that we want to do. These are the rules that we follow for working with our adding and subtracting negative numbers. So the fact that the signs were different, that tells me I need to subtract. I need to subtract their absolute values. The absolute values of these numbers are 6 and 12. When I subtract those, 12 minus 6 gives us 6. So that tells us that our answer is going to be 6. Now, the fact that we have a positive number that we circled down here at the bottom, that tells us that it's going to be a +6. Now, I don't have to include that positive in front of it. I can just write it as 6, but my answer would be 6 or +6. So then we look at our next example. I have 19 plus a -12. So we have to decide, do I need to rewrite this expression? Well, it's already an addition problem, so I don't need to rewrite it. So I would only need to rewrite that if it was a subtraction problem. So I'm going to leave this as is. It's going to be 19 plus a -12. So now I look at the signs. I have a +19 and I have a -12. So that means my signs are different. Well, if the signs are different, then that tells me that I need to subtract. So if I subtract those numbers, 19 minus 12, remember we're subtracting absolute values, so 19 minus 12 would give me an answer of 7. So now when we go down to the bottom, circle the sign of the larger absolute value. So 19 has an absolute value of 19, 12 has -12 has an absolute value of 12. So 19 is a larger absolute value. 19 is a positive number. So then this is going to become positive. That means my answer stays as +7. So our next example, I have 10 minus 16. So again, this is a subtraction problem, so I do need to rewrite that. I want to rewrite that as an addition problem. So my addition problem is going to be 10 plus, and because I changed that subtraction to addition, that means I need to change my 16 to a negative 16. So as I rewrite that problem, it becomes 10 plus a negative 16. So I look at the signs. I have a positive 10, a negative 16. My signs are different. If the signs are different, that tells us that we subtract. So as I subtract those, again, we're subtracting absolute values. The absolute value of negative 16 is 16. The absolute value of 10 is 10. 16 minus 10 is going to give us a difference of 6. So now we look down to our last rule. Circle the sign of the larger absolute value. Well, I have 10 and 16. 16 is a bigger number than 10. 16 is a negative number, so that means we're going to circle negative. So that tells us that our answer is going to be not a positive 6, but our answer is going to be a negative 6. Okay, and so for our last example, we have a negative 10 plus a negative 12. This is a positive, or this is an addition problem, so I don't need to rewrite it. I can leave it as it is. So we look down to our first rule. Looking at our signs, are they the same or are they different? Well, I have a negative 10 and a negative 12. These signs are the same. Our rule for signs being the same tells us that I have to add the numbers together. So I use my absolute values, 10 and 12. Adding 10 and 12 together is going to give me 22. Now we look at our last rule and circle the sign of the larger absolute value. Well, 12 is a larger number. 12 is a negative number. So therefore, my answer is going to be negative. If you remember back to some of the other rules, we said that if they're the same sign, we just keep the sign. So either way, it's going to show that this answer is not going to be 22, but it will be a negative 22 would be our answer. So what I want you guys to do now is you're going to pause your video, and there are going to be 2 example problems that you are going to work out. And whenever you're done with those 2 example problems, go ahead and go back to your video and continue and press play. Okay, so your first example problem that you solved was negative 6 minus a negative 9. So because that's a subtraction problem, we do need to rewrite that. So we're going to rewrite that as an addition problem. So it's going to be negative 6 plus, and since I changed my subtraction to addition, I have to change my negative 9 to a positive 9. It becomes the opposite. So I change that to negative 6 plus 9. So now that we have it rewritten as an addition problem, look at our signs. Are they the same or are they different? I have a negative 6 and a positive 9. So my signs are going to be different. Different signs tell us that we subtract. And 9 minus 6, because remember, we subtract absolute values. So 9 minus 6 gives us an answer of 3. So now I have to circle the sign of the larger absolute value. Well, 9 is a larger number, 9 is positive, so that tells me that my answer is going to be positive. So I can leave this answer as 3 or a positive 3. For your second example, we have 14 plus a negative 9. This is already an addition problem, so I don't need to rewrite it. So I look at the signs. I have a positive 14, I have a negative 9. These signs are different. Different signs tell me that I need to subtract. So I'm subtracting their absolute values. 14, the absolute value of negative 9 is 9. So 14 minus 9 gives me an answer of 5. So finally, to our last rule, circle the sign of the larger absolute value. 14 is the larger number. 14 is positive. So therefore, I can leave my answer as a positive 5. The next slide tells you to try the 8 problems on your own. Following this, you're going to see 8 different practice problems that you are going to work out on your own. If you have problems during these practice problems, if you have questions, anything that you need help with, make sure that you stop by during my office hours or send me an email or a message, and I am happy to help you out. Now, as you finish these 8 practice problems, you're going to see another slide that says to complete your mastery check. Now, this is the link that you're going to use to complete your mastery check. It's going to take you to a Google form where you will answer those questions. The questions are in the Google form. You don't have to write them down. You don't have to use these slides. However, if you felt that using these slides and these rules were helpful, after this link for the mastery check, you'll see that all of the problems from your mastery check are there. So you can use these slides to help you. Or if you want to use pencil and paper or you have another method, then you are welcome to use those methods as well. But make sure that you finish up your mastery check. Let me know if you have any questions, and I am more than happy to help you. Good luck.